encourage others to explore the art of gem cutting.
Have you ever looked at a sparkling gemstone and wondered how it got that way?
Well, I bet you have.
We're going to be diving deep today into the fascinating world of gem cutting.
That's right.
And we're going to be going beyond just like the simple how-tos, the step-by-step.
Right.
We're going to try to uncover some of that hidden world behind the sparkle and shine of all these stones.
That's right. We're going to be looking at a YouTube video, a guide to making a gem cutting YouTube video.
Yeah. And I think we're going to learn a lot more than just how to make a YouTube video.
I think so too. I think we're going to find that gem cutting really is a place where science and art meet.
Okay. I like that. Science and art meet.
Yeah.
So we've got this rough stone, right? Comes out of the earth.
Comes out of the earth.
And then how does it become that dazzling gem that we all,
right,
love and want to wear?
Well, we're talking about lapidary.
Lapidary.
It's the art of cutting and polishing gems. And it's amazing. Like you said, it can be something that just looks really dull and ordinary when it's in its rough form.
Yeah.
But through cutting and polishing, it can become this brilliant gem.
Now, this guide we're looking at talks about the different kinds of gems,
Right.
It talks about precious gems. So you've got your diamonds, rubies, sapphires, emeralds.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the ones we always hear about.
Right.
What makes those precious?
Well, it's a combination of things. It's rarity, it's durability, and just that exceptional brilliance, like diamonds, for instance. They're the hardest natural substance on Earth.
Right.
And so, they've been prized for centuries and centuries for that reason.
They sparkle like crazy.
They do.
Yeah.
And then you've got rubies with their fiery red color.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient cultures, they thought that if you wore a ruby, it would make you invincible in battle.
Oh, wow. So like warriors would wear them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we got precious gems.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have this whole other category called semi-precious.
Right.
What are those all about?
Semi-precious gems are still super beautiful, but maybe they're a little bit more abundant.
Right.
And maybe they're a little less durable, too.
Yeah.
But they're still very, very beautiful. So you've got amethyst, for instance, with those purple hues.
Yeah, I love amethyst.
Yeah.
It's a great color.
Yeah. And in ancient cultures, they associated it with, royalty and spirituality.
Oh, wow.
And then you've got opals, which, with their play of color,
They're so pretty.
It's mesmerizing.
Yeah.
They've often been associated with, good luck.
So you got precious and you got semi-precious.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this whole other category called organic.
Right.
So we're talking about pearls and amber and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always kind of blown away that those can be gems.
Yeah.
Because, they're not rocks.
They're not.
How do you get a gem from something that's not even a rock?
That's a great question. And it has to do with how they're formed. So with organic gems, they're formed by natural biological processes instead of geological ones.
Okay.
So for instance, pearls are formed inside mollusks.
Right.
And it's actually a defense mechanism when an irritant gets inside the mollusk and it forms this pearl around it.
Interesting. So it's like the oyster's trying to protect itself and a beautiful pearl is the byproduct.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And then amber. Amber is fossilized tree resin.
Right.
And it's millions and millions of years old sometimes. And you can actually see insects and plants, from a bygone era.
Wow. Frozen in time.
Trapped inside.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a little window into the past.
So how do we get from this raw material, whether it's a rock or, a piece of amber, to a finished gem?
Right.
What are the tools of the trade?
Well, a chef needs their specialized equipment.
Right.
A lapidary has their own specialized set of tools. So you
Right.
start with a lapidary saw, which makes the initial cuts to create kind of workable pieces from that rough stone.
Got it.
And then from there, we move to the grinder, which is where we start shaping the stone.
Okay.
And you use different grinders depending on how hard the gem is and what kind of cut you're going for.
So it's not just one grinder does it all.
No, not at all.
Okay, interesting.
And then from there, you move to the polisher, which is, that's where the magic really happens.
That's where it goes from, rough to brilliant.
Right?
So how does that work? What is the magic?
Well, it's really about transforming that rough, dull surface into something brilliant. Imagine you start with something that looks like a plain old rock, and through a series of steps, you make it reflect light with this incredible intensity.
Wow. So you're like awakening the fire within.
It's like awakening the fire within. Exactly. It's going to sparkle like 1,000 stars.
Now, the guide we're looking at also mentions something called a dop stick.
Yes.
What a funny name.
It is a funny name.
What is a dopstick?
It's very important, even though it has a funny name. It's how you hold that gem steady
Oh,
when you're cutting and polishing it. So it gives you that precision,
okay.
and it really helps you avoid damaging that stone.
Now, the guide is also careful to mention, and rightly so,
Yeah.
that this is something that requires a lot of safety precautions.
Yes. Safety is paramount.
What are some of those?
You always want to have eye protection, gloves, and you really need a dust mask.
Because you're grinding away at rocks and stuff.
You're grinding away at rocks, exactly. So there's going to be particulate matter in the air,
Right.
so you want to protect yourself.
So let's talk about the process.
Okay.
We're going to walk through the steps of how a rough stone
Mm-hmm.
becomes a gemstone.
Okay.
The first step is selecting the rough gemstone.
Right.
What are some of the challenges you face when you're just looking at this rough stone?
Well, one of the biggest things is you're trying to assess the potential, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at it in its rough form, and you're trying to see what could be. Right.
So, one of the first things you look at is the color.
Okay.
How vibrant is that color? Is it consistent throughout the stone?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the clarity. You're trying to see if there are any inclusions. Inclusions. These are like tiny little bubbles or cracks within the gem,
Okay.
and that can affect how brilliant it will be.
So are those bad?
Well, it depends. Sometimes it can actually add character to the gem,
Okay.
but sometimes it can detract from the brilliance.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have to consider the size.
Right.
The size of that rough stone will dictate what kind of cut you can do.
So you're kind of like a sculptor,
Yes.
looking at a block of marble, trying to figure out what's inside.
Exactly. Exactly. Seeing what's in there.
So then step 2 is the cutting.
Mhm.
And this is where I think the artistry comes in.
This is where it comes alive.
What happens in the cutting phase?
So first you do the initial cut with the lapidary saw,
Okay.
and that just creates a manageable piece.
From that rough stone. And then the next step is the shaping. And that's where the lapidary decides what form the gem will take.
So what are some of the choices?
Well, you can do a cabochon,
Cabochon. Okay.
which is smooth, rounded.
Yeah.
It's often used for opals, for instance, star sapphires. And then you can also do a faceted cut,
Okay.
which has multiple flat surfaces.
Okay.
And that's really designed to maximize the brilliance,
So like a diamond.
like a diamond. Yeah.
So those facets are like mathematically designed to bounce the light around
Right, exactly.
and sparkle like crazy.
Nice.
So you'd mentioned that faceting, people might say it's more about precision than artistry.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I can see that. Precision is definitely key.
Yeah.
But I think that it's also an art form.
Okay.
The lapidary, they understand how each angle of the facet will interact with the light
Right.
to create, these patterns of brilliance.
So they're like choreographing the light.
They're choreographing the light. Exactly.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay. So we've cut the stone, we've shaped it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we move to polishing.
Yes.
So what is the polishing stage?
Well, polishing involves a lot of different stages, too.
Okay.
So, first you've got to sand it,
Right.
and you use progressively finer grits of sandpaper.
Okay.
And you're basically smoothing out the surface,
Okay.
getting rid of those little imperfections, creating this really even surface.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, you do the final polish.
Right.
And this often uses specialized compounds and tools,
Okay.
and it brings out that final shine. You go from this kind of dull, matte surface
Okay.
to this, mirror-like finish.
So the final step in our process here is the inspection.
Right.
This is where you get to put your white gloves on
Right.
and really check out what you've done.
Exactly.
What are you looking for in that final inspection?
You want to be under some really good lighting for sure, so you can see any flaws that are still there.
Okay.
And you want to make sure that the polish is, nice and even and brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yet checking for symmetry, you're checking for that clarity. And, of course you want that sparkle.
Right.
It's the culmination of all that hard work.
So we've been talking about the basics here,
Mm-hmm.
but the guide mentions that there are all these advanced techniques.
Oh, yeah.
You had mentioned faceting.
Right.
What are some of the other things that we haven't talked about?
There are so many different types of faceting.
Okay.
You have the brilliant cut, which is often used for diamonds.
Okay.
You have step cuts, which are used for things like emeralds.
Okay.
And then you have these mixed cuts, which are more complex designs.
Okay.
And then you have carving, which is where you create these really intricate designs on the surface of the gem.
Yeah.
And then you have engraving,
Okay.
which uses specialized tools to etch patterns onto the gem.
It's incredible to think that this is like a centuries old, probably millennia old
Right.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people have been fascinated by gems
Yeah.
and the beauty of gems
Yeah.
for, as long as we've been around.
As long as we've been around.
I'm fascinated by all the stories, the historical significance of gems and what they've represented in different cultures.
Right.
I mean, the fact that you could have something like amber
Right.
that captures a snapshot of life from millions of years ago.
Right.
Just incredible.
Yeah, it is. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
if you were to design a piece of jewelry, what kind of gem would you use and why?
That's a great question to think about.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening for me
Yeah.
because, I look at gems and I think, oh, they're pretty.
Right.
But I don't always think about the process that goes into creating that beauty. It's not just about, finding a shiny stone. There's this whole history, this science, and this artistry
It's true.
that goes into unlocking that beauty.
That's a great way to put it. It's unlocking that hidden beauty.
And there's so much more to learn.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.